Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten, and this is Elsa, my unofficial co-host of Weekly Hope. And we want to welcome you to this week's second show. Welcome. We had a really, really great show yesterday. If you missed it, you can check it out on our Facebook page, also in our video section and on our YouTube channel. But we've got another one today, and we are really, really excited about it. We've got an absolutely wonderful guest and a really interesting topic, which I can't wait to talk with you about. But before we welcome her on to the show, I want to tell you a little bit about, what we do with this broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, just give you a little bit of background information. So what we do here at Weekly Hope is we like to provide a forum, 30 to 40 minutes every week, sometimes twice a week, to interview different experts, clinicians, advocates, people with their own recovery stories, just from a wide range of different areas of expertise within the field of eating disorders and mental health. Bring them on here, talk about an interesting topic, and hopefully, get your comments, thoughts, and questions, and provide a safe place to be able to hear a hopeful message. Ask good questions of these people who are often amazing and just full of so much brilliance and goodness. So that's really what we are all about. If you are joining us again, if you are a return viewer, welcome, welcome, welcome back. Also, this is meant to be very, very informal and conversational. We want to include you in this conversation. So as you tune in, please leave a note in the comments section, say hello, let us know your name, where you're signing in from, and do not be afraid or hesitant to share, to ask questions if anything comes up. And if you happen to be watching this show later, also, please send us a comment. I and other members of the team here at Eating Disorder Hope will go back and look at the comments and questions and make sure that you've got the resources and the answers that you need. So that's just a little bit of a warm-up and an introduction to who we are. Also want to let you know as well, if this is your first time to the Eating Disorder Hope Facebook page and your first time learning about us and what we do, we're an online mental health resource hub. We've got a website full of articles and videos and more information than you could ever possibly digest on our website at eatingdisorderhope.com. If you are seeking information about recovery from an eating disorder for you or for a loved one. So please, I hope that you find this a very, very welcoming place, and that you are able to find answers and resources that you need. More of those at eatingdisorderhope.com. So, all right, without further ado, let us get to our guest. I'm going to bring her on the other side of the screen here. There is Grace. We have Grace Melrose. Hey, Grace.
Hi, Kristen. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to read you a little bit of Grace's bio so you can get to know her a little bit. She has been a professional in the field of nutrition for over 12 years. Grace completed her BS in dietetics from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She moved to Arizona in 2008, where she completed her internship and received her license to practice as a dietitian. Her experience is primarily in the field of eating disorders, autoimmune diseases, research, and functional nutrition. Grace has served in the military for 15 years and is currently a nutritional medicine officer for the Air Force Reserve. She's also a full-time mom and a wife, and in her spare time enjoys hiking, cooking, of course, and relaxing with family. So that is Grace. And she also, of course, and this is her full-time duty, besides being a wife and mom, is nutrition director at Rosewood Centers for Eating Disorders. So that's a little bit about Grace. So Grace, thank you so much for getting up early and taking the time to do this. We really, really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Kristen. Thank you for the opportunity to just have fun and answer any questions you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I just have to ask you before I, ask you to describe a little bit about what you do at Rosewood. I read this in your bio when you first sent it, but then I was just reminded when I read it again, and that is that you were in the military and you work with the Air Force Reserves. So that is so cool. What led you to that? Because I would imagine, obviously, your services especially are much, much needed in that community.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I'm still in, so it's definitely an honor to still represent the military. I joined right out of high school, age 18. Actually joined with the Army, and throughout time, I really kind of realized I wanted to pursue nutrition as part of the military. So some people do different jobs than what they do on the civilian sector. And joining the Air Force, I was able to continue to pursue that. Right now, we currently only have 13 reserve dietitians for the United States. So it was definitely a blessing and an honor to become part of that small group of individuals. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, really, really cool. I can't believe there's only 13. I feel like that for that kind of demanding work, there needs to be a lot more. So anyway, you're joining us from Arizona today. So tell us a little bit about what you do at Rosewood Ranch.
Yes, at Rosewood Ranch as a nutrition director, I oversee both the whole nutrition department. So our kitchen, the culinary staff, to what we do, providing menus and quality food to our patients, and also overseeing all the dietitians. In addition, I do see patients time and time if I need to, but I'm really here as that supervisor to make sure that we're doing best practices and getting all the new information and research out to our current dietitians.
Gotcha. Awesome. Oh, we've got some people saying hello here. We've got Sarah Rutherford that says hello. Hey, Sarah, it's great to see you back. Thanks so much for joining us. And we have Amy who says Rosewood with preach it, sister. That's what I call those hand emojis. I don't know if that's what they are, but that's always what I call them. We've got Sonia says hello. The Kirsten Haglund Foundation, which is usually my mom, which says hello, and she says hello, Grace. So awesome, so glad. And as I just saw, we got some new viewers. So as we go along here, please let us know that you're here. Say hello, and make sure to ask any questions you might have of Grace. So let's dive into our topic. This is really, really cool and interesting. We haven't done anything like this before in the show yet. And I find it extremely fascinating. And I think that people who have struggled with eating disorders, there is very much a gut-mind connection. And we're going to talk with the expert on gut health and the eating disorder recovery process. So when we say gut, what exactly are we talking about?
So when we say gut, I'm not just talking about, our physical. I'm also talking about everything that's within. That includes all the hormones involved. It can be maybe food allergies or sensitivities that someone has, but really it's also looking at our emotions, because we have found that emotions a lot of times are within somewhat the gut and the stomach area. And we'll dive into the hormones in a little bit about how that's all connected.
Yeah. And so it's not just like your actual stomach, the organ, but it's a whole like biochemical, emotional thing.
Correct. And it starts from our mouth through our entire digestive system. So some people think as their gut as just the intestines or their stomach, but we're looking at all of it from when we first enter food into our body.
So interesting. And so what role basically, like from a 30,000 foot view, does gut health play in the recovery process? Because I know probably we're all obsessed about it in the midst of the eating disorder, but what role does it play in the recovery process?
I believe in the recovery process, it's along the whole entire pathway of identifying all those emotions, and or maybe if there's sensitivities to foods, it's having identified those, working through those, but being aware that no matter what, throughout life, there can be changes. There is no perfect way that we're always going to feel 110%, that we're not going to maybe have bloating, gas, distension. And it's being able also to identify maybe when I'm under stress or some of those emotions or anxiety are heightened, that maybe those symptoms I have are exaggerated.
Oh, interesting. And that points out, that's a really, really great segue into my next question, which is how gut health, because you were talking about like those symptoms can be exaggerated by stress. So how exactly, and I would love to know like from a chemical perspective, because I think it's fascinating. But give us a look into how exactly the gut is connected to the brain.
Sure, in so many different ways, Kristen. So I'll kind of go to something very basic. When we have to establish a meal plan, our meal plans really in the eating disorder world are kind of universal. They're designed to have 3 meals and 3 snacks. And a big reason for that is because ghrelin, which is an appetite hormone, has been shown to be the most even when we're having those 3 meals and those 3 snacks. Now, if you're skipping meals or you go too long without eating, they've shown that ghrelin levels really can spike and drop, which really affects your appetite. So for example, if my ghrelin levels, which tell us when we're full or when we're hungry, if those are off, then I might be triggered out of the need to want to eat, and that could lead to a binge. So something as simple as managing those appetite hormones is really important. You froze up there for a second. Bear with us for a second. I think we froze up. I might just continue talking on the subject. Let's see.
Hold on. My computer just literally shut off. I am so sorry.
Hi.
Did you hear me? My computer just literally shut off, just went completely to black. Oh man, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry all of you who are watching, and I'm so sorry, Grace. And you were saying something really, really interesting. So, I mean, the Facebook Live kept going while you were talking. My computer just decided to sign out, sign off.
At least all the viewers kind of got that first part when I was talking a little bit about appetite hormones.
Yeah. So you go on ahead with your brilliance, and Elsa and I will listen.
All right, wonderful. So to kind of move past and to get more into complex issues, really, that gut and brain connection is also looking at other types of endorphins and hormones. So they're really linking serotonin levels and many other types of brain chemical hormones in relationship to the gut, which I find very fascinating. And there's a lot of science behind that, and there's still a lot of new science emerging that we just yet don't know. And speaking of new science, some of our viewers may be familiar with the term gut impermeability, or AKA what they're calling leaky gut. So there's emerging science and evidence that's talking about this impermeability issues that could possibly be leading to certain symptoms that have to do with the brain, like migraines. So we find that very interesting too. Now, I'm not going to talk about specifics on like what food that would be, because it's really much more involved than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the recovery process is really, you kind of have to treat both, right? I mean, it's not just, and I'm sure that you're working on the intersection of this. Like, it's not just, okay, I have to do the talk therapy with my, with my psychologist or my therapist or psychiatrist, and then I have to just eat the food. It's much more complex than that. They all kind of have to work together, right?
Yes, completely.
Yeah. So, all right. So I want to talk about this, and this is just a question I had, and like, how do you balance this, especially as the nutrition director, with everything that you do for casting the vision for how this all incorporates into recovery. I think people with eating disorders tend to have a very overactive brain and mind when it comes to how am I feeling, right? I mean, the number one thing you hear all the time that, of course, we try to make sure that we don't listen to that voice is the I feel fat voice, right? Fat is a feeling, blah, blah. And as I was thinking about it, I thought, well, so much of that comes from how do I feel about my gut? Like, how does my tummy feel, And so I think we can tend to overanalyze that. How am I feeling in my body? Like, how do you work with things like gut health and work on how that feels, and then balancing some of the, like what we talked about before, the bacteria in the gut and all of that, without getting into like the analysis to paralysis kind of thing of it, which is the eating disorder brain. Like, how in the world do you balance that? It's a miracle.
Sure. Like you said, it's completely balanced. But what I want to mention is when you talk about feelings, we need to validate feelings. So we also want to think about thoughts provoke feelings, which provoke behavior. So the behavior is often whatever is being reflected in that eating disorder, which is triggered by feelings. And so oftentimes we have to get curious and investigate, well, what are the actual thoughts behind the feeling? So what's the thoughts going on in relationship to, let's talk about the gut, for example, since that's our topic, is when you're having these feelings and you're symptomatic, what are the actual thoughts behind it? And then we break down those thoughts and decide, well, are they really real? Or is there some mistruth to those thoughts? And then I work on that really to validate that individual that their feelings are very real, but maybe there's some mistruth to where the thoughts are coming from. And yeah, hopefully that kind of answers in a nutshell. And at the same time, we can be working on some real, true, tangible problems if someone has small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, if somebody has come in and they've been without food intake for a long time, they may have actual digestion issues. So we may be giving certain supplements like digestive enzymes that can help support the digestion of food, and or maybe the right types of probiotics, things like that.
Yeah, so super interesting. And you're right. It's almost like, in a way, it's good to be thinking about our body and the process and the digestive process, and from, putting food in your mouth to, down to the gut. But at the same time, it's like what you're telling or, working with clients on doing is saying, okay, it's okay to have those thoughts, but let's look at what's behind those thoughts, what's motivating them. And so it's almost like don't think less, think better.
Yeah. And a lot of those thoughts grow and they change throughout your recovery. And even if your body is changing as well, maybe some of those thoughts get louder and body image becomes louder and more precedence. Then we have to go back to the body image piece and really focus on creating maybe a positive body image.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to see, we got some more viewers on. Hey, welcome. Also want to thank Sonia and Sarah and my mom as well for letting us know that we were all good, and thanks for hanging out with us. Also, Lynn says hello. Hey, Lynn, welcome. And just want to let you know that if you've got any questions at any time, make sure you share or just thoughts, comments, whatever. Make sure that we take advantage of having Grace here. So for those of you that are just joining us, let us know if you've got something on your mind. Okay, so what I wanted to ask, this is something else. Oh, actually, this is awesome. Sarah's got a question. So Sarah says, I'm currently in hospital after a 3-week relapse, and I'm so sorry to hear that, Sarah. And thank you so much for joining us in the midst of that. How long does it take for the body to rebalance after that?
That's a challenging question. I would really be individualized. And I have to say at Rosewood, we do a lot to individualize things. I would want to know, 3 weeks, what all kind of changed in those 3 weeks? What were the specific behaviors are we talking about restricting? Or are we talking about binging? Because the body has made changes during those 3 weeks. And in order to rebalance that, we're going to have to get on a meal plan and finding structure again. And it can take a while, as she may already know.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think you cannot underestimate the individuality of stuff like that. Like every person's body is so different. But thanks again, Sarah. I'm just wishing you lots of love and sending you lots of support for you in this process. And we're thinking of you, and you can do this. You got this. And just because you've had a difficulty and a setback doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing now and on the path to getting better and to investing in your healing process. So we are with you, girl, and you can do this. You got this. Thanks, Sarah. So I was curious about, and this has recently come to my attention because I have a friend who has given me a little bit more of a window into her struggle with celiac disease. And she doesn't have an eating disorder, but after learning more and more about just how crazy her world has become over the years of learning how to deal with this, and we don't need to go into the specifics about celiac. Oh, I see Lauren there. Awesome question. We'll get to it in just a second. When you're dealing with celiac, how does that impact gut health? Is it basically, I mean, does that change much of this conversation, especially for someone in eating disorder recovery, because of the fact that they have such a sensitive digestive process?
That's a great question, Kristen. Actually, if somebody's been diagnosed with celiac, that makes it a lot easier for our kitchen and for us to know and accommodate. And honestly, with following a celiac diet 100% and avoiding the gluten, your gut will turn around pretty quickly, depending on how long it's been. Within that process of before knowing. And they've found, we're seeing more and more people getting diagnosed with celiac. And I think that's just because doctors, physicians have become more aware that IBS symptoms is no longer just a blanket of I have IBS, I have IBS-D. They're actually running the numbers, looking at blood work, taking polyp samples to see if that inflammation is in there and if somebody has that disorder that's genetic.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And actually, can you, I didn't put this question in there, but I'm hoping that, I mean, obviously you're the expert, so it's not going to be hard for you to answer, but I'm curious about this. How much of then too, this balance of, good balance in the gut and, restoring a good balance of those hunger and satiety cues within the body, those hormones, everything we've been talking about, how much of that has to do with like food quality? And I know, like, obviously there's this line because you don't want to, none of us want to get then again over obsessed about something else related to food, right? Or, walk into the realm of orthorexia, right? We know that all foods fit, but at the same time, their quality of food quality has to be an important part of this conversation too, right?
Food quality is important, but what I want you to remember is the keyword of balance. When sometimes someone presents with me that maybe they are eating all organic, the food quality is really good, and they're eating whole foods, yet they're still very symptomatic and they have all these underlying issues. What I come back and I say, are we looking at the whole picture? Are we looking at sleep hygiene? Are we looking at how you manage your stress? Are we looking to make sure you have adequate hydration on board? Because all of those things actually trigger different areas within the gut. Not getting enough sleep doesn't support the metabolism and the growth and the cell turnover. Too much stress, we've already identified, changes cortisol levels, changes the gut flora and the inflammatory response. So there's so much more than just our food quality. It's really looking at that big picture.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that and helped me in my brain, because I think about that a lot. And I love that you mentioned the importance of sleep hygiene, because who doesn't want permission to sleep more, right?
But we live in a society that pushes us to go, be perfectionists, have type A personalities, when sometimes we just need to slow down, take a break, and listen to what our body needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Spot on. Really, really, really good reminder there. Okay, so Lauren has a question. Could the sign of which, hey, Lauren, it is so, so great to see you here. Thank you so much for being on. Lauren says, could the sign of being overly hungry mean something with the receptors are not working properly, meaning the feeling of being full, empty pit feeling? Many of the people I have met struggle with this.
That's a great question, Lauren. The sign of being overly hungry means something with the receptors not working properly. Kind of back to your other question that you had earlier, Kristen, is the body responds really quickly, and it wants to work right. It really does. And so if someone's overly hungry, my first question would be, well, are we getting adequate nutrition all day long? Or are we going more than 3 or 4 hours without eating? Because if someone gets to that overly hungry point, oftentimes that's where the answer is. Not necessarily that the receptors aren't working right, because more often not than they are. Now, with the exception, let's talk about someone that's restricted for a very, very long time. It's a natural body process to allow hunger to go away, because it would be a very uncomfortable feeling all the time to be ravenous and to be hungry. Now, when that same individual might be on their recovery path and they're following a meal plan again, those appetite hormones are going to start coming back, and they're going to come back rather quickly. And that has to do with our cells in our body and just that point of getting good nutrition back in the body, but they will eventually regulate out properly.
Yeah, super interesting. And great
question.
Yeah, I think that was super helpful. And Lauren, thanks so much. It's a great question. All right, so back to here, and we've got some new folks on. Hello and welcome. We're here with Grace from Rosewood Centers for Eating Disorders. I'm talking about gut health and recovery. So if you've got a question or you just want to pop in and say hello, let us know where you're signing in from, and if you've got something on your mind. Okay, so next thing I want you to tackle is, can you blast the myths about cleanses, detoxes, juice fat, like intermittent fasting and gut cleansing? It's all the rage. It's very faddish out there. And it's interesting. We had a conversation on spirituality in the recovery process yesterday on our Facebook Live. And we talked a little bit about the fact that, eating disorders or that behavior can set itself up as a salvation, like a cleansing, a becoming holy, kind of like a ritualistic religious experience. And it seems like the focus on detox and cleanse and all this kind of stuff is a similar thing. But are all these things which seem focused on the gut, how truthful are any of them?
So that is a challenging question. My first inclination to say with cleanses and detoxes is that they're temporary. Because at the end of the day, if we're trying to detox our system or we're cleansing and getting rid of things, at the same time, when we eat, we are still going to build up that natural everything that we have within our bowels. And that is a natural process. And so you actually kind of hit it right on the head when you said, with detox and cleansing within the eating disorder population, we have to really investigate, is this more for our gut health and general health, or if there's any underlying autoimmune diseases, any issues there, or is this that sense of purity, that sense of I want to feel empty, because that goes completely deeper in more of a therapeutic realm. Now, I will talk, though, we don't, within the eating disorder population, I'm not going to recommend intermittent fasting. However, we can say that there is some new emerging science that the gut does want to be at rest, and that there can be rejuvenation at rest, but we get that at nighttime. So wouldn't you agree, if I stop at my HS snack, before I get that entire evening to rebalance and help out my gut health before I have breakfast the next day?
Yeah, so good. And also the term breakfast is literally break fast. So that sleep portion comes back into importance here because it's not only a time to rest your mind and help, brain cells develop, and there's so many things, but also it gives your organs the necessary time that they need to give themselves their own very natural detox, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I always love to get a nutritionist perspective on that because I think it can be so easy to get caught up in the latest fad from, which really I think it's some people are really trying to help others, but it can just feed so much into that eating disorder mentality. So it's really nice to kind of blast the myths on that.
And I always go into the why. Tell me about, why you need this. Why do you want to use apple cider vinegar? Is there really to help out your small intestine and look at optimizing the pH so it optimizes that gut flora? Or are we using it for the weight loss gimmick and the weight loss purposes? So it's really investigating that why.
Yeah. And also, I just want to challenge everyone out there, if you're listening and you are struggling or in the recovery process, just to be really sure that when you investigate that why, that you're honest with yourself, because it can be very, very easy to deceive ourselves. And that, oh no, well, okay, if like Grace asked you that question, if she's your, dietitian, you say, oh yeah, no, I am totally doing the apple cider vinegar for gut flora and da 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 da. The eating disorder voice is very, very smart. So be really, really honest with yourself. And that's where having, obviously a treatment team is so, so essential. So you can have someone challenge you and push back on that why to make sure you're really being honest with yourself.
Yes.
Amy says, always have to check my motive. Yes, ma'am. Me too. With everything in life. It's so cool, Grace. I think that, and I think you'd probably agree, is that the things that we learn in the recovery process are skills for life in everything. So like learning to really question our motives and be people of integrity not only works with our food choices, but later on in everything else in life as well.
I agree. We all have to.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you know? Getting toward the end here, so just want to remind you guys, if you've got questions or want to share your thoughts with us, please let us know. We've just got a few more questions left here for Grace. Okay. So how does someone know when their gut is sick or not working well versus when it's healthy? How can just your average person know or be tuned into that?
So I would say if an individual feels like their gas, bloating, maybe diarrhea, any symptoms that they're having is making up a significant portion of their life, then it's time to explore. Not to mention if someone struggles with some of the things that we already talked about. Maybe they have lots of factors, not just the symptoms, but maybe they have poor sleep hygiene. Maybe they're not having a consistent meal plan intake. They're eating a high amounts of processed food or convenience foods. There's high stress in there. The biggest one to identify is exploring if you have an autoimmune disease like celiacs, like Hashimoto's, like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic disorder and has had some links. There are multiple types of disorders that have actually, we found, been linked to some of these gut issues. And so if someone knows that, having that in the back of their mind, talking to a dietitian and or bringing that up to their medical team is a great way to start exploring those things. Because I've just found in my practice over the last 10, 12 years, as functional medicine has been growing an area of interest in my life, the patients that I see that have those underlying issues, we could have helped so much sooner. And we could have gotten onto that right path sooner.
Yeah. Such a great point. And obviously, again, to the emphasis on making sure that you're talking to your medical team, that you talk to someone if you think something might be up. There's no risk in that at all. So, okay, so we're going to continue. Lauren posted a continuation of her question, and this is great.
Okay.
So this was the original question about the receptors not working properly. And of course, says to continue, many of the people complaining of the overly hungry feeling have had bulimia or a binge eating disorder. I was wondering if it's because somehow the stomach has stretched out and just needs to shrink back to its normal size, or maybe it's all physiological or psychological. I didn't know if bulimia and binge eating disorders act much differently on the gut versus anorexia.
That's a great question. There actually can be changes to our gut microbiome and our gut flora based on if you have binge eating disorder versus the anorexia. And so depending on if somebody had that binge eating disorder and the bulimia, there's so many mixed signals that's happening every time somebody purges that the stomach and the brain lose that connection. And we have to work on, as soon as that bulimia stops and that behavior goes away, now we can start rehealing that connection again. The binge eating disorder, that hunger feeling, is a combination of the behavior, the psychological piece, and I would presume there is some appetite hormone changes, all three of those. So I would validate that someone that has the bulimia and binge eating disorder at times may feel hungrier, but I would question, when is that time? Because a lot of times at night and in the evening is an opportunity where people may feel hungrier. Is it actual stomach hunger or is it mind hunger? There is a difference. And here at Rosewood, we do some education about the 9 forms of hunger. And we actually look into the different forms, what the triggers are, and how to work through those, and identifying, are you eye hunger, are you mouth hunger, what type of hunger do you actually have?
That is so good. That is so good, because it's true. I read an article yesterday, I think, about, and it used the acronym HALT. Are you hungry, like hungry,
Yeah.
angry, lonely, or tired? And
Okay.
it was, yeah, let us know, because it was an article in reference to binge eating disorder, but I was thinking that it also applies to restriction as well. Like when that moment comes to, like, okay, you know, when you do the dance in your mind with the eating disorder voice about whether you should eat this or not, that it's again, okay, well, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? But I know there's a whole bunch of other things. So yeah, do you have something?
And that's also why we, at the inpatient residential, we're not trying to teach the intuitive eating. We're trying to teach more mindful eating, because you're starting to reconnect that mind and that body, that actual hunger, and identifying what is true hunger. And so it's along that recovery process where it can take a very long time before somebody could really be eating intuitively and listen to those hunger cues. So it's important to know what's behind that. I grabbed a book that's very interesting. I can send you what it is. It's called Mindful Eating by Jan Chosen Bays, and it goes into depth about the 9 types of hunger, which has evolved from what it used to be, which is 7. And then it gives like tips and resources at the end on how to identify that. And one thing to point out, Kristen, is here at Rosewood, we really have opened our doors to complex individuals that have to be on specific diets. And we kind of work through how much of that is really with the eating disorder, how much is it based on our society these days, or how much of it is maybe those underlying problems I talked to you about.
Yeah, so cool. And yeah, I will go back when we get off here. I'll go back and I'll put the name of the book. Actually, can you let me know it again? And I'm going to type it into a Google search as you do. What is it called?
It's called Mindful Eating by Jan Chosen Bays.
Okay, perfect. So for all you guys watching, I'm going to put that in the comment section after I pop off here. So, and Lauren says, thank you. That was thank you so much. That was informative. So good. I'm super glad. And Rachel has a good question here from a fellow registered dietitian working with a company focusing on and studying the importance of gut health and how blood metabolites, I don't know that word, but maybe you do, reflect the balances and imbalances of our gut microbiome. Do you often recommend probiotics for ED patients, or do you focus on dietary intervention?
Great question, Rachel. We do a combination of both. So I'm working at Rosewood here. We're doing a study in relationship to constipation and what we can do with probiotics. So probiotics seem to be quite the buzzword, but we do know that if someone has that gut microbiome alteration, that probiotics can be very useful. Now, it's very important to know that we can't often give probiotics to everyone. So someone that has a very compromised immune system, someone that maybe already has small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, if we feed more bacteria in there, we potentially could be causing more overgrowth. So it is important to find that balance of, does this individual really need probiotics? So we investigate a little bit further.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel, for that great question. I appreciate it. Super awesome. And then, and Amy's got a cool question here. She says, I think basically the question is, I have to focus on where my hunger is coming from. My hunger is a burning sensation in my stomach that's right below my sternum. And first of all, I will say that is so awesome that you've been able to identify and articulate that, because hunger is it can be such an abstract concept, especially for those in eating disorder recovery. So I am just super impressed that you are able to articulate that so well. So bravo, Amy. But anything I would consider in my gut that I'm feeling would be more like gas, or my feelings is, etc. Is that where cortisol is released?
So cortisol is kind of a completely separate area. The first thing that comes to mind when I read this is I actually think of, burning sensation. Is there some sort of reflux there? Is there not enough hydrochloric acid that's produced within the stomach? I know within the eating disorder population, sometimes the physician will have to order DGL and certain types of supplementation that helps either calm or will help with the digestion process. So I don't automatically connect any sort of cortisol with that at all.
Yeah. Okay. But serotonin is produced in the gut, right? We touched on that briefly before we signed on here, but that's correct, right? I've heard that. Just want to make sure that's actually right. Is that true?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah. sorry. I just didn't hear you. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So Rachel says, great answer. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for all these great questions. This is awesome. And I hope you're okay with this, Grace. So we just keep going on these. Denise says, I'm in recovery from many years of anorexia and experience nausea and burning sensation after eating meals. I take medication for hyperacidity, which helps. What I'm wondering is, how long does it take for your stomach to get used to eating meals and snacks now on a regular basis?
Wow. If you've been in recovery for many years, that is, I apologize. And I, say, wow, to like being in the recovery process. And it's so individualized. Like some people can take 6 months, some people can take multiple years. It really is multifactorial based on what all went on with your anorexia, because for some individuals, even having that nausea and that burning can happen with laxative abuse, can happen if there was any purging behaviors involved. But just with the straight anorexia, I just want to say, keep pushing, keep following the meal plan, and hopefully through time that will improve. You may want to talk to the physician that has you on the medication for the hyperacidity and see that if there's any kind of connection with some foods, like more acidic foods that tend to cause that type of burning sensation, like coffee, tomatoes, your citrus fruits, things like that. I would explore that.
Yeah, awesome. That's a really great answer, Grace. Thank you. And and Denise, just want to encourage you as well. So I think you're doing an awesome job. Keep on keeping on. Okay, so the Kirsten Haglund Foundation, which is probably mom, my mom, who is a nurse as well. And so I know she finds this all super, super interesting. Says, can you talk a little bit about gastroparesis, which I have absolutely no idea what that is, and recovery?
Yes, I can. Great question. I'm so glad it kind of came up. So gastroparesis, really the definition is slow digestion. And it's very interesting because in the eating disorder population, my personal thought on it is almost every single person has some form of gastroparesis. Because think, if the normal process is to keep your metabolism the most efficient, we eat food, we digest our food, and we go through that whole process. If there's anorexia, you may potentially have, you probably do have gastroparesis at some point because the body tries to slow down to conserve energy. That's what gastroparesis is, slow digestion. So it's a natural consequence of the behavior. Same way with the bulimia and the purging. If the body is doing something that it doesn't normally tend to want to do, then those processes are going to slow down. Now, gastroparesis, at my previous job, there would be sometimes some individuals would have severe gastroparesis, and in order to tell what that actually looks like to where a diet would be involved, we have to have a gastric emptying test completed. With that gastric emptying test, it will tell us dietitians what we need to do in regards to the diet, because there really is a diet that's based on severe gastroparesis. But most people coming in, that gastroparesis will be reversed with following a meal plan if it's not like that true slow digestion.
Yeah, super
Great
interesting.
question.
Yeah, thanks, Mom. It's a great question. Cool. So thank you so much, Grace, for staying on with us for so long and answering so many of these good questions. It's so cool to have a dietitian, someone who's an expert on this here to answer all of these questions, which is really cool. And I have been learning so much from you as well. So it's been very delightful for me. Last question before we go here. What kind of hopeful message can you give to someone? Obviously, we have some people watching who've been so honest and vulnerable in sharing what they're going through. What kind of message for hope can you give people who are dealing with this difficult relationship between the mind and the body as they go through the refeeding, the weight restoration, the recovery phase? As someone now who's worked with so many clients, and I'm sure seen very many hopeful stories yourself.
Wonderful question. Thank you. So the thing that comes to mind that I often will talk to my patients about is finding that driving force for why you wanted recovery in the first place. What is that deep inner motivation that can surpass sometimes when we're in pain, when we're vulnerable, when we have those negative thoughts and that negative mindset? Because when we go back to that place of peace and why we really want to be in recovery, that's where the answer lies. And it can help you push through sometimes when you're having really hard days and you're super symptomatic and when you feel like nothing's going to work. So that would be my thoughts.
Absolutely. Super, super great. Grace, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and sharing with us your wisdom and expertise. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I wish everyone out there, thanks for joining in, and I appreciate all the wonderful questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll say goodbye to Grace.
Bye.
And I'm going to say bye to all of you guys. Wow, this was really, really awesome today. Thank you. I just want to just recognize a lot of people shared some very, very deep and personal things today, and I just want to say thank you for doing that. I also want to wish our friend Sarah, just sending you light and good wishes and our prayers to you as you make this journey through recovery and navigate some difficult waters. And just want to put the exclamation point on what Grace said there at the end, to wherever you are along this path in the journey, to just think about and meditate upon and be mindful of the reason that you started this recovery process in the first place. What was that motivation? And that will get you through a lot of the really darker, more difficult times. And What has helped me in the past as well when thinking about that inner and that very first motivation too, is that always reminding myself, and I learned this after my very first heartbreak, I think, as a 14-year-old girl, when my first boyfriend broke up with me, and it was horrible. And at 14, your emotions are all crazy. But what I learned then, and then of course it was emphasized throughout the recovery process, and I still try to remember today, is that the feeling passes. It's only for a season. The feeling will pass. So whatever darkness that you might be in psychologically, or however in your gut you might be feeling in that moment, it does pass, and it will pass. So what kind of thought and positive recovery vision, right, thinking back to that motivation, can you focus on to help you through that season, that time that doesn't feel so good? Because it does pass, and it does get better. So, all right, cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Amy. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Suzanne. And Denise, of course, Lauren, for joining us. Thank you all so much. And a little love and light here, too, from my unofficial co-host. Elsa says ciao. She wishes you a beautiful, wonderful rest of your week and weekend. This episode is going to be posted to, it's going to be here on our Facebook page. It's going to be on our YouTube channel as well. So there was so much good information. If you want to rewatch, if you want to download it, send it to a friend, or obviously share the link, please feel free to do that. We're all about providing you the resources that you need, and it's all free. So just please take it. We'll be back with another episode of Weekly Hope next Wednesday. That's going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So stay tuned to our Facebook page, our Instagram, and our Twitter as well, to find out more about our guest and our topic for next week. But as always, it was a joy to be with you, and hope wherever you are in the world that you have a wonderful, blessed rest of your day. All right. Bye, everyone. Can you say bye? Elsa gets lots of sleep hygiene. She does perfectly well on the sleep end of things. All right. Bye, you guys. See you next time.